I have been thinking a lot about this setting and trying to make it work and fit. Like one of the things that I've been talking about on the razor's edge, because we live out on the outside and then there's the world of the inside. The people on the razor's edge are right in the middle, and it's pretty crazy, but they live there and they enjoy it because that's where they live. They were born there. Why would they want to move? So they live on the razor's edge, and it's pretty wild and nuts because of all the energy there. I have talked about how geography in the inside is really fluid, and it sounds pretty weird just to say, oh yeah, the geography is fluid and it's got like the fractal, infinite fractal landscape and it's wrinkled like a brain, but what does that mean? A good analogy, not the way it works, but a good analogy, really, really quick for the inside is like, consider each like a block of area for a wide out open map looking top down for a rough quick view. Each area like 10 kilometers across from side to side or 100 or whatever might be considered an area, and each of those areas has a stack of like 1 billion plates, every possible combination of things that could be there in that area. They all exist there, but just like your computer monitor, all of YouTube's videos exist on YouTube, but you can only watch one thing at a time. You've got one monitor. Yeah, you could put up 1 billion little ones on the monitor, but the point being it's still just one monitor. So when an observer wanders into an area where it hasn't had a lot of intelligence to stabilize things, you could wander into any one of those billions of plates in that stack because they all exist there, but only one can be perceived at a time. And each of those plates and areas has its own history, its own creatures, its own beings, and they all exist, just there's only a smaller amount of area. Intelligence, as it gathers in them, will tend to stabilize. So when you wander into an area and it has to, press shuffle on its playlist, those songs that have been played before tend to get played more often. So the more an area is used, the more often it comes up when someone wanders into an area. Thus is a quick overview, like a satellite view looking down at, thousands of kilometers. This place is like this big. That's an easy and simple way to look at it. It doesn't work that way, but it's close enough that it works. So there's all these things that you can wander into. They all exist there, but without the glamours, the signs, the things that guide you, you'd never be able to find your way through anything. So that's the way that works. Really, really rough. I mean, it's like mountain range might be more 5, 6 of these areas, and they stay as a discrete unit. But when you break it down and getting closer, each area like that, mountain area, mountains are made up of like tiles as well. So a mountainous area can be fluid itself as long as the tiles always make up a mountainous area. It's not going to become like an homogeneous gray. If there's a mountain, it may rearrange itself, but it'll always be a distinct and discrete mountain. And so you've got changes within, but the more intelligence, of course, you have, the more things stabilize. And then the glamours, they guide people through everything. No one knows how they work. No one knows what they are. They really freak a lot of people out, but without them, no one would be able to get anywhere. Now, I've mentioned how there's the crossroads. When you come into the inside from the razor's edge, you will come to the crossroads. It has been used for so long for so many people, and this is true on every single door leading to the inside across the entirety of the world. Every place is like that because people are people, and so we have crossroads. Now, on this particular one, is the one I talk about, of course, there's you enter the crossroads that can lead back to the razor's edge, or to the east to get to the western borough of the Crimson Kingdom, to the north to get to the Pale Domain, or to the west to get to the Association of Sovereign Free States. There's not really a south, but we'll come back to that because there is, and I'm going to talk about that one day soon. You can travel from, say, the Crimson Kingdom to the Pale Domain without going to the crossroads, but you'd need specialized equipment. I mean, really, really quick. If you wanted to travel from the Crimson Kingdom to the Pale Domain and you use the crossroads, might take you, part of a day, most of a day to do the drive to the crossroads from the Crimson Kingdom. And so you take the exit to the Pale Domain, and then you either sit down, set up your caravan and sleep inside, or you set up a sleeping area outside as tents, or you find a place that sells lodging and you stay the night, and then the next day you take the drive all the way up to the Pale Domain. Takes most of a day, but it's less than 2 days you're there. If you just started out from the Pale Domain or the Crimson Kingdom, and all of the glamours were giving you the shortest routes possible, and it was just a straight shot on a road, and you were driving a vehicle that had a lot of computerization and required zero maintenance and zero fuel, so you had teams of people that could help guide this thing on the straight road to make sure it doesn't, imperfections and go driving off into anything. You're driving forward, and it shot forward at 200 miles an hour, 24/7, 365. It would still take well over a year at that speed, traveling 24/7, to get from the Crimson Kingdom to the Pale Domain. There's just that much fluid geography, but the glamours and the way things work, it's not always a straight shot. And so you can get 2 days travel for a distance that might take you years at an impossible method of travel. So that works out well, and again, people are weirded out by the whole glamours. If you think about it, those that don't think about it, and that's fine. But because of all of that use, if you come from a place that's not one of those 4 or 5 major places on the crossroads in this area that I write about, there are an infinite number of places that come to the crossroads. Most of them only go to those 4 or 5 places on those exits. And even at that, though, if you come from an area that doesn't have a major exit, you can still find where you came from. You're not trapped or lost. Your crossroads will take you back to where you come from. It's just that if you don't come from there, it's possible you'll never be able to get there. Because to put a monetary value on this one real quick, I've talked about this, if you put having the site as just enough that you have it, it's like, say, a 2-liter bottle is the full amount of site that people can have. If you have just enough to qualify as having the site, it might be one single drop into that 2-liter bottle, and that's how much you have. If you are at that level to 50%, you're only going to have those 4 to 5 exits. If you have a monetary value of your site of 50 to 75, 51 to 75, then if you keep it in your head, if you're on the crossroads, so if you're stubborn with repetition, you can force a new exit as long as you got it in your head. There's complex math to it, but it works in that fashion. So if you have enough site and you're dedicated, you can find ways out of areas that aren't normally shown just because of the sheer repetition and worn-inness of habit from people using it that way. If you have, if your bottle is 75 to 100% full with your site, if you have that much site, the crossroads there's every exit available. You have to really work hard to be able to find what you want, because there are an infinite number of exits, because there's an infinite number of places you can go, which of course makes it much more difficult because you concede too much. So yay. And the glamours, of course, are everywhere. Of course, the entirety of the inside is filled with them. The razor's edge has an abundance. But there's still glamours even out here on the outside, because people out here have sight. Yes, it is kind of tragic in some cases because, as I've stated, 80% of the people in the world have no idea that there is this stuff. They cannot interact with anything that's from the inside because they have no receptors for it. 20% of the people in the world can, but only 10% of the entire population, 50% of those that can see, can only see it consciously. 50% of the people with that cannot interact with this stuff consciously. They still feel it, they just doesn't force through to the conscious part of the brain. So you might have the tragic story of somebody who has music written and performed by people on the inside, recorded on equipment from the inside, pressed onto a disc made from materials on the inside, bundled with a player that's made on the inside, and then given to somebody who has the sight but can't affect it consciously. Even under normal circumstances, music from the inside like that, you can have vague feelings of touch, smell, sight, sound. Just, it has more than we have out here, but if you have the sight, you can feel these things. These people can sit in the middle of a room with a machine that they can't really interact with fully, and they're being affected by this music. They can be sitting there crying and feeling emotions and not knowing why. Because nothing pushes up into their conscious mind. Poor people. Especially since if you have the sight, even if you can't consciously use it, you subconsciously crave anything from the inside. It fulfills a need that you didn't even know you had until you came across it.